We're talking with Paul Harding, a partner at Martin, Hardy and Mazzotti, and we're glad to be talking with him today because, Paul, I've got a question for you. There's a question around PFAS. We've heard about PFAS. They are everywhere. But recently, there was a story down in Bennington where they were doing some burning and adding more PFAS into the general environment. I could see that as a potential problem, but PFAS have been so pervasive, I'm not sure if there's where the line is drawn here.
Yeah, I mean, they'd like to have none, and they're pointing towards Albany and saying, hey, you guys are burning this foam, and you're incinerating it, but coming through your smokestacks, the wind kind of blows that way, our way, and it's dropping these PFAS on our land and in our water, drinking water. So big news. I mean, we've seen it before. The DEC for New York came back and said, well, listen, we saw the levels that you're saying, but those are the levels we find in every urban area. Well, Bennington is saying we're not an urban area.
Right.
We're Bennington, and find another way to do it. Get the wind to blow another way. Keep it in New York. We don't need you. So it's an ongoing concern. To your point earlier, if you look hard enough, you can find this stuff virtually everywhere. The question is, what are the acceptable levels?
So, Paul, how do we sort through what Bennington's saying, the college professors there that have identified the levels as too high, with the New York and Vermont environmental people saying that they don't think they are too high?
I think the Bennington people they're feeling justified in saying, we don't want anything. We don't burn this stuff.
Yeah.
You do it there and you're landing and no one knows. I mean, you say acceptable levels, we say zero is an acceptable level, right? So we're not going to play your game and say, well, you would take years and years and years of this before there's any issue, until the rules change. Then they find out, oh, geez, turns out just a smaller amount of this can affect this in somebody, a thyroid or cancer or the babies that they can be born underweight. It's an age-old argument, especially when you're lifting stuff in the air from one state and dropping it in another.
Yeah.
I can certainly see the reason for the angst, but probably they have nowhere to go other than to continue to do what they're doing, and I like that they're doing it, is to write, alert, and, cause some people to think about this, even though legally they'll probably get shut down.
But, Paul, we had a similar story. I remember it's been a couple of years ago at least, with the International Paper Company and them doing some burning, those fumes coming over into Vermont. But I'm just thinking about what happens if my neighbor, I live in a rural area, if my neighbor decides to burn their trash and the smoke starts coming over into my yard. Where do I draw the line between when do I go over and say, hey, you're causing me some health problems?
First thing I learned in law school was a thing called riparian rights, and it's a word that just never, I don't think I've used 10 times since. But if you're further up the river and you put stuff in the river, you're affecting other people's drinking water, right? And that's been age old. This is stuff in the 1300s in common law. I mean, everyone got the fact that somebody who gets to the stuff you're going to be using first has a potential to violate it in some regard. So, burning chemicals, and I don't think that we have all the answers to it. I think there's deemed, like I said, acceptable levels. But it provides a lot of tension, especially when you have neighbors doing it. You got the Hatfields and McCoys, generationally saying you did this to us and you did, and this is going to continue on. But again, it comes down to picking. We live in a world where we've got to get rid of this foam.
I wonder if there's a suggestion by the people in Bennington, that there's a better way to dispose of this stuff. I know they're saying that they're suggesting there should have been a test burn conducted before allowing the facility to incinerate it.
There always is a way to clean it up a little bit more, right? So I'm sure there are ways that they can take the stuff they're releasing, which the DECs are saying is fine, and refine it more, break it down more, right? So the answer is yes. But then the flip side is, what does it cost? And especially right now, trying to ask the government or any municipality or any company to spend more money doing something, especially what we're going through with this pandemic. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But sure, they're right. There are ways that they could take this thing and continue to break it down into smaller particles and then maybe find a way where it doesn't have to blow into Vermont. I think we'd all agree that's probably a good idea if they could figure that out. But right now, I think we're going to be living with those acceptable levels. And, again, long-term effects usually are found out down the road.
Well, Paul, it sounds like there might be some middle ground here. Is this an opportunity then to maybe save money and to make both parties happier by not litigating, but maybe mediating?
Maybe. I think that you're never going to quite – there's going to be extremes here, right? There's going to be both camps, and they're both going to be on the really far sides of what is acceptable. And there's one camp that's saying none, and one camp that's saying we're already breaking it down too much. I think it will be ultimately mediated in some regard. I think the litigation would fail immediately, but it's going to be more of a public relations mediation. I don't think that these companies in the states are going to do a whole lot right now because they think what they're doing is safe, and I hope they're right.
It seems to be the age-old question, Paul, of cost versus public health.
Always.
Well, we always enjoy getting your expertise, Paul. Paul Harding from Martin Hardy and Mazzotti. Remember, they can give you great advice, too. Just give them a call and check them out online at 1-800-LAW1010.com.